Hi everyone, I'm Hoffer, and we're going to discuss today some DevOps best practices that can help you to better manage your Jira instances. So, hello there, I'm Gil. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Salto. Salto is a startup company. We founded it in 2019 with offices in Tel Aviv and San Francisco. We're about 70 employees, and we raised $69 million to date from great investors like Bessemer, Lightspeed, Salesforce, Ventures, and Excel. And Salto was founded in order to help you guys. As you know that you manage Jira and you administer Jira in order to enable your companies to perform better. And just as Jira is being used in modern companies today, SaaS applications basically run the modern company. You will see a large collection of these business applications, anywhere between a few tens to a few hundreds, that basically implement the modern backbone of a company. Anything from Salesforce for sales processes, to NetSuite for finance, to Jira for support and task management in R&D, to HubSpot or Marketo for marketing. Those business applications are at the core of how modern companies run today. And in order for these companies to utilize them, all of these business applications require deep customizations. As you all well know, this is your day-to-day, right? Customizing Jira, changing workflows, adding custom fields, building automations, duplicating projects, etc. Now, configuring and customizing these business applications at scale can become very challenging. Let's discuss just a few of those challenges to understand the depth of the problem that we're facing here. Now, the first challenge can sound a little bit silly at the beginning, but it can actually be very hard to know what is it that you already have implemented in your Jira customization. In many cases, that Jira instance that you're managing has the history of a decade, done by tens of different admins that already left the company. How can you know why a change to that configuration or customization was made, by whom, and when? Moreover, let's say that you need to go and implement some change to that customization. Let's say that you need to go and change a workflow. What will be the impact of that planned change inside Jira? Jira in many cases is integrated with many other business applications in your stack. Let's say with Salesforce, in order for you to know some details on the customer that a certain bug or feature is impacting, or a support ticket in Zendesk. What will be that impact on other systems if you go and change a custom field in Jira? How do we go and develop changes reliably without impacting production? In many cases, we'll go and do some changes directly in production, which is obviously risky. In some other cases, we would like to utilize a sandbox for doing that, but unfortunately, in too many cases, our sandboxes are not good representatives of what's going on in our production instances. Some more challenges, and again, this is just a very partial list. How can we collaboratively review those changes to the configuration in a team and create collective ownership over our configs? How can we reliably promote those changes that, let's say, we just did in our sandbox to our production? In reality, in most cases, we need to meticulously document them and then repeat those same steps in production. And then in many cases, things go south. How can we roll back if we need to? How can we keep a proper paper trail from compliance, as in some cases, Jira is under the provisions of SOX or SOC 2 audit? How can we know what is already broken in our implementation? Because unfortunately, probably many of us already have some broken automations or screens or workflows within our instances. Well, it sounds overwhelming at first, but it is actually not that much different than many of the challenges that we saw in the world of IT just 50 years ago. The world of IT and the way that we manage our infrastructure was very manual, error-prone, in different organizational silos with very long delivery cycles, infrequent releases that eventually all also led to reduced quality. Probably the older ones of us in the room that are listening right now remember those days of an IT person going into the data center with a box in his hand and start installing it. And that led to tremendous challenges for modern organizations relying on their IT organizations to deliver changes and new infrastructure over time. And those challenges were addressed by using automations and basically treating those assets as code. And the as code concept was born, and it completely transformed IT. And today it's a key part of what we consider as modern DevOps practices. It led to faster release cycles, shorter delivery sessions, increased quality, and unlike infrequent releases, modern high-performing organizations today utilize continuous delivery to continuously deliver on the value of their changes. Now, all of this was enabled by the as-code concept, which really matters because it enables us to, first of all, version control that configuration. It makes it auditable, which makes it much easier to also perform rollbacks on that configuration. Having that representation in code is just text, right? But it enabled tools such as linters and static analysis tools to enforce consistency and add insights as to what is that we already have implemented. It made the entire configuration collaborative as it just became much more visible and explorable. Hence, it reduces the well-filled bus factor, right? What will happen if that leader that knows that configuration would disappear in a single day? How would that team survive? Well, now they have artifacts to collaborate on, which automatically documented everything. It made everything much more predictable, repeatable, and consistent because it's not hidden inside the server or behind endless screens which implement the configuration for Jira in our case. Whether it is all represented in very much accessible and visible code. And at the core of this is what we're preaching for in Salto, which is adopting engineering mindset and adapting best practices, methodologies, and tools from the world of development and DevOps into the way that we manage our business applications. Now, let's imagine such a magical world. How would it look in this business engineering-oriented world? Well, as a first step, we would have a clear and complete textual representation of our implementation. Our entire customization or configuration will be accessible in text, which will enable us for instant visibility and very easily answer questions such as, what is implemented in our instance? Really as easy as Command F on our laptops. We could version control that representation in a source control system such as Git with Bitbucket or GitHub and be able to answer questions on changes over time. Who changed that configuration? Why? When? Because we have such a representation, we can also analyze it automatically and answer questions on dependencies and change impact. What are all the impacts of changing that custom field, of changing that workflow? It is an enabler for the creation of shared responsibility within the team. Everyone should be aware of all the major changes. Moreover, having such a textual representation will enable us to always be able to develop in high fidelity sandboxes, not directly in production anymore, but also making sure that the configuration of our sandboxes are representative of the setup that we have in our production. A change proposal in such a magical world is as simple as having a feature branch in Git with that different configuration and a pull request in order to actually review and approve that change. Promoting a change from our dev to the UAT to production Jira instances, as simple as running a git merge and deploy. we can actually have a CI/CD pipeline for those changes. Rollback, as simple as running a git revert and deploy. Proper paper trail for changes, as simple as tying a change request, such as a Jira ticket, to a git commit. All of these best practices, which have been used for many years of software development, all of a sudden come to rescue us with our day-to-day challenges with managing Jira's configuration. Now, everything that I just mentioned is actually not Jira specific. As an industry, we should have a standard way to practice business engineering across our entire stack. It doesn't matter if we're dealing with our Jira configuration, Salesforce, Zendesk, Okta, or NetSuite. Eventually, it's all configuration or customizations that we should be able to practice business engineering best practices with. Now, all of the concepts that I just mentioned, they're all generic, right? We haven't talked about specific tools. I'd like to show you a few examples of how we can achieve that with Salto for Jira in our cases. But some of these can actually be done also using the API, and there are some other ways to achieve that. Let's take a look. The first thing is that in Salto, we represent everything as code. We call our language Knuckle and ACL. It's a dialect of HCL. In this case, you can see the representation of a Jira board. You can see its different parts, different columns, the different statuses, and the subquery for the board, etc. Because this code has structure, we can also render it in a much friendlier way. Here you can see the same board rendered in a more user-friendly way. And here it is when I expand the columns configuration for that same board. We can also very easily understand dependencies because we analyze that configuration. In this case, we're looking at a custom field, and we can see that it is used by 3 different field configuration items and by 4 different screens, and that each depends on its custom field context. And we can explore and browse that configuration using all of these dependencies. As the entire configuration base was just turned into text, into code, we can monitor for changes in that code and get alerted for this. In this case, for example, for any change to an automation, I can get notified via Slack message, or for any new workflow and workflow schemes. But really, the flexibility is unlimited here because we have that textual representation for everything. We can very easily compare different environments. Here I can see all the differences between my UAT and production, and a drill down into the differences in a project component in this case. We can version control our configuration in Git using GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab. And we can also very easily deploy changes. In this case, just taking a look at the different differences between our UAT and production, selecting the ones that you'd like to deploy, and just deploying them with a single button instead of recreating them in our production. To recap, the main message and the main takeaway from this session is that you should apply DevOps best practices to the way that you manage your Jira customizations. In order to do that, you should manage your customizations as code. And you can start today, even by taking small steps. If it intrigued your interest, I urge you to stay in touch with us at Salto. Our website, LinkedIn, and Twitter handle are here on this slide. We also have a free tier, which is Free for Life, which is an enabler for impact analysis for Jira. That's it. I hope it was informational, and thank you very much.